Hello, hello. Look at you
Ah,
in a fancy
ah,
library in where are you
yeah,
now?
yeah.
Wisconsin? You in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I'm at my parents' house. This is their office, the
They
family
have
office,
they
if you
have an
will.
office. Very
Oh,
fancy, man.
we do. Yeah, it's very bourgeois, very chic.
I want to do the American tour. I want to see the house.
It's a nice house. I mean,
Okay, maybe,
it's
maybe I'll do it
a,
in person when I come over. It's a
it's a,
typical
it's
suburban home, probably, right?
yeah, yeah, you could say that. Yeah,
Three bedroom, four bedroom.
I don't know, something
Oh,
like that. It's a big house.
what?
It's a big house. It's too much house. It's like
Wow, maybe I
square
should
feet.
move to the
It's
Midwest and
it's
buy
it's too much
a.
house.
Do they plan on
I
having more
mean,
kids? But they after you, they're like, this.
no.
Hello, Jangan.
You. Hey, Jangan. What's up, man? Are you wearing an Occupy T-shirt? Really?
Oh my god. Oh, Occupy Mars. Okay.
Not Occupy Wall Street. Okay,
No, no,
What's
no,
that?
no. Off the Wall Street.
okay.
Off the
I
Mars.
thought it was an Occupy.
Yeah, he's gonna occupy Wall Street as a barbarian. Jangan's gonna occupy it by doing LBOs and buying up things.
Well, I thought you were doing like an AOC Met Gala type thing where you show up at the Met Gala and you wear a dress that says "Tax the Rich."
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Bitches.
Oh
IT consultant
wow!
is in.
Look who is on time, early. Like you're early. This
Yeah,
never
you really
happens.
are early, looking fresh.
Oh,
I don't know
yes.
if I look fresh, dude. I just brushed my teeth, but I need to go get a coffee. I'm definitely not in that morning zone. And we're gonna start 20 minutes before schedule, guys. This is incredible.
I
Yeah, this
know.
is amazing. This is like
This is
everyone gets A plus
unprecedented.
today.
Oh
A
wow.
plus plus plus. You get
And
A plus.
sound
You
works,
get A plus.
camera works.
Yeah, but your internet does look a little bit weak, so you got to talk to your parents about that.
I'm in the.
Negotiate your internet.
Dave was telling me how nice his parents' house are. It's like a 20-bedroom house,
It's
like
not a
a
20
mansion
bedroom
in
house.
Wisconsin somewhere.
It's not a 20. It's not a 20. Don't listen to him. He's lying.
I, you know, you know, I, you know, Dave. I could have sensed that even if Alex didn't tell me. I could
Yeah,
sense you were a
right.
20
Yeah,
bedroom kind of guy. Like
What?
I felt like you grew up thinking like, where should I sleep tonight? You know.
Wait.
exactly.
which bedroom which bedroom shall be the one
So
that I
basically,
take?
so basically, your parents run a motel.
Yeah, basically.
Got him. Got him.
Basically.
Hello, barbarians, and welcome to the 5th episode of the LLB podcast, Low Level Barbarians, from Asia on Asia with discussion and debate on trending topics with our usual hosts, the man of the high ground, Dave Chang,
From America today, actually.
hailing from Wisconsin,
Yes.
hanging out with Jangan Lee, the information super connector. How are you doing, Jangan?
I need to show you something.
I have that same poster. I have that same poster.
Of course you do.
Of
Seriously,
course, if you're born in China, they issue one at birth.
I feel like I should just get one of that just to piss Amy off. Like as someone who's left the PRC, I feel like having that hanging in my room behind me on
Do
all
you,
meetings
Yes.
might
do
actually
you,
slowly get on the nerves.
do you want mine? I have an extra, I think,
Yeah,
sitting somewhere.
I would take one. I
Okay.
would
I
take
kind
one.
of, I'll get the Vietnamese version of it. Okay, Andrew G, the master debater. How are you doing, Andrew?
That's right. I'm doing good. Unfortunately, not in Wisconsin like Dave, but otherwise, I'm good.
Well, maybe we could be there soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
come visit.
Yes, and Alex, you're typically your host of EOA. First topic. Okay, I know we kind of lied to the audience. We are going to talk about Grab again. However, everyone gets 1 point and 1 rebuttal, and then we move on. All right. So Q2 results are out. I read the press release. I don't think much has changed for me. I think they're pushing hard on this kind of profitability narrative. I don't know. Maybe long term they have something, but I do. We're kind of critical of Air Asia before, so I do hope they kind of ramp up. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with more super apps coming in. Every day, I think there's a new super app coming in. Dave, you had something to share?
Oh yeah. Let me just share my screen real quick, and I promise it'll be real quick.
Yeah, 1 point.
Yeah. Well, it's 2 points, but basically, how do I share this again? Hold on. 1 second. Yeah.
Well, just don't share your porn screen. Or
which tab did you share?
yeah, right. Yeah.
The infinite tab.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also,
okay,
since
okay,
this is a podcast, Dave, you're gonna need to verbalize your slides a lot more.
I know. This is
That's
the
your
thing. Like, I
point.
realized talk about numbers is terrible, but then like I made some slides, but then like people that are
Yeah.
listening, like whatever, they can go on YouTube.
You
Yeah,
really
it's-
do sound like an ex-consultant, Dave. Did you have were you a consultant in your past life at some
He
point?
was his
No.
one of his first jobs, right?
Well,
Kind of.
let's not get into that. Okay.
Advisory. Yeah.
Can you guys see this thing, by the way?
All right,
Yes,
let's do
no?
this.
Yeah, we can see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
We're
cool.
from
So I
Wisconsin.
mean, okay, so just I only have two real quick points here, right? And so I went through the Q1 and Q2 results and did a bit of reconciliation, right? And I just found two things that I found was interesting. So they're making a big hoo-ha about sort of like they're showing like 150% GMV growth and blah, 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 blah. And I just went back and I sort of like back-ended how much they're giving away in incentives, actually. So basically, if you look here, right, so this ANS is their adjusted net sales, which comes from that published report. So 286 million in Q2 2020 and 550 million in Q2 2021, right? And then, so this is a non-IFRS stat, right? And then their revenue, which is an IFRS stat, right, for the same time period as Q2 2020, 77 million, and Q2 2021, 180 million. So if you go back and look at the reconciliation they did, basically based off their last, their Q1 report, what they did is essentially moved consumer incentives from post-revenue to pre-revenue, right? So what that means is that gives us an indication of how much they've spent on consumer incentives and to a certain extent driver incentives at the same point, right? So basically what I want to highlight here is their incentives have increased year over year from 209 million to 370 million. So what it's basically saying is they spent 161 million to grow about 103 million in revenue. So I think what I'm saying to me is their growth is just all incentive driven, which again hasn't really changed my stance on any of this. I think what's a bit more interesting though is the next part. How do I go down? Where's my?
Sorry, so how much does that represent in terms of GMV change? So they spent 160
So
million extra
I'll get
to
there.
get how
Yeah,
much
I'll get there.
GMV? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, so the next slide is so their GMV is here, right? So 2.4 billion in Q2 2020, right? Versus 3.8 billion, 3.9 billion in Q2 2021. So it's approximately the same, right? So they spent about 50% more and the GMV increased about 50% more. But what's interesting is using these numbers and their average GMV per MTU, or sorry, their average basket per MTU, that's a typo there, we can back end, they're actually MTUs quarter over quarter, right? So they actually grew 25% year over year on the MTUs. And then if you use the 161 million incentive number, basically their CAC is $30 US. And then using like a 4.6% margin, which is basically the revenue divided by GMV, we're looking at like a break even on paying customers of 652 USD per MTU, which I think is pretty aggressive for the region. So that to me are the interesting takeaways, which may not be readily apparent if you don't compare the Q1 reports versus the Q2 reports.
Yeah. What's also interesting, like, I mean, if you just take that delta, right? So GMV 3.9 versus 2.3, that's about 1.6 billion additional GMV for $160 of additional incentive spend. It's a 10% CIR. It's not exactly like bad e-commerce wise, right? The question is, with that increase in GMV per MTU, why are they not able to increase revenues? Like it's good to see GMV grow by 50%, but why do you think revenues haven't been able to scale?
That alludes to the point. Is this paid for the growth that like every dollar they're putting in is just growing the market, which is a very expensive exercise, right? Which is they're pushing beyond the natural market size. Is that it?
So, I mean, there's no natural market size. It's a fast growth market, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, limited to like the profitable segment because wealth distribution has to go down for everyone to participate in the super app, right?
Yeah. So where are these incentives going mostly? So because mobility is still at its low season, right? Which means I guess primarily like is that food?
It's delivery. I mean, I didn't want to break out by segment by segment because we promised each other that we do only do like 5 minutes of this, but it's delivery. I mean, you can just go look into the Q1 versus Q2 and do the math. It's pretty straighthtforward.
Which is interesting, right? So sorry, just one little like question / comment there, right? It's like so in Malaysia we have some competitors that are trying to launch low commission food apps, right? And so what they're
Yeah,
doing is
correct.
they're partnering up with third-party delivery service providers, and then they're going to merchants and saying, instead of the 28% predatory, take rate that these guys do, let's give you half or even less, right? 10 to 15% instead. And then they then link up with logistics providers like GoGet and Lala Move and try to
Yep.
get them to do it instead. To the end customer, it actually seems a lot more expensive because, like, for me, for example, a restaurant that's 15 kilometers away, it's like 15 ringgits, $3.50 for a for that delivery fee versus say 5 ringgit for Grab. And so as a result, I'm not sure if they like what Grab has effectively done. Like, at least to me, it seems like with that 28% like top line take rate from stores, and then like subsidized delivery, theoretically they should be able to cover it, right? But why do you think that even with delivery becoming such a huge segment, and with it becoming 20, like with that high of a take rate that they do in a lot of their markets they're in, minus maybe Indonesia? So is this just Indonesia bleed? Is that what's happening, or is it like, are they just not able to take that 28% and convert it very effectively into logistic subsidies? Jangan,
Uh,
Dave, what do you guys think? Yeah.
I actually read through their whole slides for the release. So there are two interesting slides. I mean, first is that the business in Vietnam practically stopped mobility wise, and I
Huh?
think
Really?
yeah. So basically, they
Mhm.
have a slide saying that mobility completely stopped in Vietnam in July. I mean, GM is almost zero. So I think
Whoa.
Anthony mentioned in the earnings call. Actually, dialed into the earnings call. You guys can do that next time. He
Oh,
said
nice.
that I think the government doesn't recognize commercial delivery services as part of essential service during the lockdown in Ho Chi Minh City. So
Ah, that's why. Okay.
so that's impacting them quite a bit. And they also have a slide which looks at which indexes each major city. I mean, 3 or 4 major cities, their numbers compared to January 2020, and you will see that Jakarta is still below January 2020 levels, and KL is like 1.5 times of January
Mhm.
2020 levels, which is actually pretty impressive. Um, so a few other points. So Andrew, you mentioned about the guys who are doing low commission. How do these guys acquire customers cheaper? Because at the end of the day, merchants go where the customers are, right? I mean, you ask every merchant, they ask, hey, can you bring me deals? And only you bring them deals, they talk about commission, whether it's good enough or whether it's too expensive. But low
Yep.
commission guys, I mean, how can they? I mean, acquire customers in a sustainable way and in a cheaper way. So Dave, you mentioned about GMV per MTU. So definitely they are trying to convert their customers into more services. I remember there was the two numbers in their slides. I mean, first is 85% of the Grab Mart users were converted from food, and
Mhm.
5% of the food users are now using Mart. So they are seeing this as huge growth potential. So we talk about Mart and groceries delivery. I mean, everybody, even in China, is spending a lot of money to try to convert this behavior because especially when I'm not sure how much fresh Grab does, but when it comes to fresh, it takes time to educate people's behavior and get them used to a system.
Um, yeah. So maybe we could leave this part for discussion for another day. It sounds like very interesting stuff. Does anyone want to respond to this? Because I feel like, look, we could go really deep with this if you really want to. It's like there's a lot to unpack there.
Do we all still get one comment on this, or
Yeah, go ahead.
have we
Yeah,
okay,
It
you
sounds
get
like
to
you used
comment.
up like
Yeah.
5 comments, but sure, you get 6. Why not?
no, so ouch. I want to see this analysis of how much we spoke afterwards, but I'm gonna yeah, try to control this. But anyways, the thing that I'm excited about, not specifically the numbers, is the Grab partnership with MTech. Um, and there's a commitment to unload Bukalapak stores onto Grab, which I find really, really interesting because, like, if you remember Bukalapak's IPO, there was a little bit of an issue first couple of days, but then they bounced back and they're doing relatively well. First
Yeah.
large tech IPO in the IDX, right? But then what's very interesting is like Bukalapak strategically trying to chase after this 60 million warung opportunity that we spoke about, I think, in episode 2, via the Mitra business. And I think that Grab's starting to see this as an opportunity, the way Ula, Gudang Ada, Buku Warung, Warung Pinta, and the others are moving, and they're like, who do we partner with here? There's a couple of like senior guys at Grab right now that are all ex-MTech, across engineering and partnership. So at the end of the day, like them being able to work with Grab Mitra and move these stores onto Grab is going to be a game changer in terms of like broadening that assortment and selection, having payments and loans like funnel to this. I think like what they're recognizing is like they can do things that Bukalapak can't. Bukalapak can do things that they can't.
Yeah.
Why not join forces? And it's almost like a weird go-to like competition via a JV, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is like really interesting strategy for Indonesia. I'm excited about that, and to see like how the Bukalapak Grab combo is going to work against the GoTo combo.
They're also acquiring a bank, right? If I hear correctly.
That's right. That's right. And in Malaysia, the licenses should be out by end of this year. So there's about 3 more months, and they're in the running. There's discussions about whether to increase the number of licenses here.
My final comment would be that I listened to a podcast with Dara Khosrowshahi, right, the CEO of Uber, and I think because their presence abroad outside of America is really big. They killed off their autonomous driving, right? So that's the exact strategy they're thinking about too. So these kind of corner stores, like if you want to talk about growth and where everyone's heading, it feels like what's driving these big platform companies is the same ideas. It seems like it's going to be rideshare 2.0. That they're going to raise crazier rounds probably and tackle this. And if you really think about it, it's similar to how the Chinese have unfolded, right? You amass the user base, you try to get more assortment in, you try to extend the LTVs, right? So I think it's just a new wave of the next big thing that everyone's converging to and competing for. So that's the way I see it.
Dave, where are you in Wisconsin, in the USA, and how long does it take for you to order anything from DoorDash or Uber?
So I am in a suburb of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So people know what that is, basically the Midwest. I mean, I can get like a pizza here in like 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
But that's like what? Which model? Like under these platforms, or are you talking like a Domino's?
It's called Papa John's. First of all, Domino's is awful, but you get Papa John's, right? It's like 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean that's a different model completely. Have you tried the actual food apps yet or no?
No. I'm actually. I mean, this is not for the podcast, but I'm actually eating healthy while I'm here, and I'm trying to lose some weight. I've actually lost 5 pounds already. So just for you guys.
Wow, you even converted to pounds already.
Yeah, I've converted pounds.
Switched right in. Will your accent change as well, Dave, in the next 2 days?
Maybe y'all.
You can hear Jangan.
Sorry, Jangan.
So I was saying that a friend of mine who used to work for some of the big hedge funds in the US and invest in tech, and he's super bullish about DoorDash. For 2 reasons. I mean, first is that I think that their tech rate is still lower than Uber in the US. I have not checked financials, so I don't have that numbers verified. And he's basically saying that because the Uber founder has promised to investors about profitability at some point of time, so it's very difficult for them to make massive investments to grow the market size. And what was for DoorDash, it's we are doing low tech rate. It's a lot of room for you to sort of buy the growth. And his second reason, which is super funny, is that DoorDash founder is from Nanjing originally, so basically he would have access to what Meituan is doing and learn and adapt them faster. So
I would somewhat disagree because at least listening to Dara's interview, right? I think you're right in the sense that part of their segment has to be a very profitable engine, but the way they look at the growth in other regions, they're willing to invest for long term, I think. So it will be a tough competition in the end of the day, I think.
But Dara is a manager. He's not the entrepreneur.
I don't know, man. His early days with Expedia, and he sees some stuff, man. Anyone who's worked with
No, sorry. Please go ahead. No.
I was just gonna say anyone who's worked with Barry Diller and IAC, man, those guys are hardcore, man. I don't know. I would bet on those kind of guys. So,
Andrew, last comment.
No, man, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep my comments
Dave?
for the more exciting pieces that we have after this.
You know what? I had something to say about DoorDash, but I think let's just move on. We said like 5 minutes, and we're already over. So
this could be for the next discussion. Food's still interesting, right? So so moving on to C Group going global. They raised a ton of money. How much did they raise?
6.5.
6.5. Yeah.
6.5 billion public markets, right?
6 point something, yes.
6.5 debt capital markets, and then
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not sure if
debt,
they is an equity.
11 million shares plus 2.5 B convertible.
Yeah.
So debt and
it.
equity.
So they're printing money essentially. The numbers are showing the growth. Investors like it. Stock price is going up, so it's easy to print money. Right, it's a good cycle.
This is larger than their IPO fundraiser.
Yeah,
That's like 2017, which nobody believed that the company could make it.
yeah, but they proved it. They proved it, right? So where are they going? Latin America, all the Americas, Europe now. Where are they not? Probably Antarctica at this point, right? So, Jangan, why don't you give us your thoughts about the strategy, how they're going about this? How do you think? Do you think this is very bullish? Do you think this is the right call? How are you thinking about the overall expansion in general?
Have you guys heard what their head of investor relations said at one of the sort of fundraisers and one of the roadshows for this particular round? I think that was on Thursday. Somebody asked her, why do you need so much money? Why do you need so much money? And apparently the lady was pissed off, and she said, I mean, she basically gave a rant, and the essential part of what she said over 10 minutes was, look, the market, the TAM is huge. Competitors are weak. If we don't raise money, I mean, we know how to grow better than you do. And if we don't take the cash now, we're stupid.
I completely agree with that sentiment, right?
I think that sent the whole room into silence for, I mean, whole Zoom room, obviously, into silence for more than 1 minute. So I think
I love it.
I think they closed the round within 2 days. Yeah.
They are truly the barbarians here, right? Like
Yes,
this
they
is
are.
like back to the 14th century. They were like, these wall defenses are weak. Everyone bring your axes.
Yeah.
Right.
So I do believe that they're riding on very good market sentiment, and if you look at share price,
correct.
it barely dipped after the announcement, and they were able to raise at the $318 dollars per share for the equity issue. So that's pretty aggressive. I think for the debt, the convertible price is like four something, I can't remember. So and it was fully subscribed. So it's really good. I do think, I mean, they are in Latin America going pretty big, and I think they're probably going to make some investments there as well. So they are going to Poland. That was reported by a Polish media, and also they are in India. So we have people telling us that, okay, whatever they're doing in India, that's coming from official sources. I'm not sure whether they're going to the Middle East, but I think that would be a relatively easy market for them to tackle. And JNT is already investing a lot in the Middle East in terms of delivery infrastructure. So you see this whole thing going on, and I think if they can make Poland work, people might come to believe that in sort of one of the more advanced countries, they can probably tackle Amazon, because Amazon has been slow to tackle markets outside US and the core Western Europe markets, right?
Yeah, I have a couple points about this. So vis-a-vis Poland, actually, Amazon, I think, is in Poland. They've been in Poland for a few years now, and they've actually, to this day, been outcompeted by the local competitor. I can't remember what it's called, but then they're there. So I had a couple points about this. So I agree with you. Number one, that I think from like a capital markets, financing point of view, this is sort of like a logical move, right? Strike while the iron is hot, while the getting is good. I have read that I'm getting a sense, and I don't know how much people agree with me on this one, is they also may or may not have a sense of urgency built in to the timing of this raise. What I mean by that is, they were the only publicly traded company that was really kind of operating in the e-commerce super app space in the region for like a year or two, right? I mean, you could buy into Lazada tangentially through Alibaba, but let's be honest, you're really just buying Alibaba at that time, right? If you really want to directly buy like e-commerce in Southeast Asia as a public market investor, you have to get C, i.e. Shopee, right? And I think, but that's changing, especially this year. We have several large competitors that have already gone public, like Bukalapak, or will be going public within the next couple of months, supposedly. So we have GoTo, and we have obviously Grab. So I think there might be an element of pressure or just urgency built in, because as I said, if people want to make bets in the region and e-commerce or super apps is their chosen vector, this is probably their last chance to be the only player in the space before there's some reasonable competition from other entities, right? But that aside, I think, for me, I'm actually not a huge fan of this move, right? And what I'm trying to say, like, what I want to get at is, like, I think there's a big difference in tech between like a tech company and a tech-enabled company, and they're often bucketed into the same thing as a tech company. But I think there's an important delineation we have to make here, right? So, I mean, just for the competition, so for me, a tech company is a company that like actually invents a technology and they monetize through technology, whereas a tech-enabled company is a company that is made possible through tech. So let me use a simple heuristic, right? So heuristic you could use is like a tech company is where technology is a profit center. So like a Google, right? Whereas a tech-enabled company is where like technology is a cost center. So let's say like an Uber or something like that, right? So within this framework, for me, C is a tech-enabled company. And if you look at the truly global tech companies in the world, they're almost all tech companies, not tech-enabled companies. And tech-enabled companies that try to do like a really aggressive global expansion, there's a very long list of very reputable companies that have tried this and failed, right? So within that, there's like Groupon, there's Uber, there's Alibaba. And for me, this seems to be them playing a game where it's like very growth and narrative oriented. And I think that honestly, I think raising the money was a great idea, but frankly speaking, if I was in their shoes, I would have deployed that capital within the region and at least assured my dominance in the region, right? I was actually reading through one of your reports, Jangan, from the Lowdown, and they were looking at the market share of respective e-commerce players in Indonesia, which is a crown jewel of the region, right? And yeah, Shopee is a leader, but it's a leader by a very, very thin margin. We're talking like 14.2 billion GMV versus 14 billion from well, at that time Tokopedia, and now it's going to be GoTo, right? So they're leading in the region, but their lead is by no means complete or sure. And I think just like this capital or this move of global expansion, especially into like a market like India, does for me seem premature. And maybe I'm sure the management has their own reason and they have much better like insight than I do. But like sitting from where I'm sitting, I'm not really a big fan of this.
Yeah. So I love that example, and I'm going to tell you why they think this way, right? Because Garena, because Free Fire. So the ultimate, like, so there's two parts of the businesses. Never forget that their primary businesses is a tech business. The second one is tech enabled. You're absolutely right. And the very cool thing is with the tech business, they have like, do you know what the largest markets for Free Fire are? India, Brazil, and then Poland comes very close to like in the top 10, right?
Yeah.
So they're literally striking where they already have a target user base that's readily on their apps, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about it, when you look at their acquisition funnel, they are already on the mobile phones of these guys. Their ad space to get that little like ticker is cheap, right? They signed Jackie Chan for a global deal. Jackie Chan's a global face, right? That ad to be displayed in Brazil, to be displayed in Poland, same cost. So what they figured out is how to use Free Fire. Like they're actually doing this out of necessity, right? They know that Free Fire has an expiry date. They don't know when it's going to hit them, but it's going to happen. And so they're like, before that expiry date happens, they need to be like have another engine running. And so what they're currently doing is basically striking in all these different markets where Free Fire already has a lead, right? So number one is like they're able to capitalize on the existing success of the game, right? Number two is there's cost efficiencies, right? With all the assets that they're creating, with the technologies that they've created, their ability to port that, because like this tech stack that they've created can be ported to Poland very easily, right? And then three is the fundamental issue they're trying to solve is assortment and speed, right? If you look at the real competitors in any of these markets, it's AliExpress, and AliExpress is shit. If you live in Poland, it takes you 2 weeks to get anything, right? And they know that they can speed that down to 5 days if they need to, because they've done that in Southeast Asia, and the maths to do it in Eastern Europe is actually even better than it is for Southeast Asia, right? Last bit for me is this, right? I was in Poland in 2019, and what struck me about Poland and all of Eastern Europe, so I spent about a month traveling through Eastern Europe, and Poland's GDP per capita is actually like slightly higher than Malaysia, right? And as a
15,000.
country, 15,000.
Yeah.
Malaysia's like, I think, 11 to
Yeah.
12,000, right? And so what really struck me, and population-wise, 30 million people, it struck me how similar Poland was to Malaysia. Like, first of all, and this is like slightly off-key, Poland has incredible food. Nobody talks about that, but Poland has the best food in Eastern Europe, and like that surprised me. But then on top of that, like culturally and the way people thought about their country, this passion that they felt, like it's a very new country. Like the 90s is when Poland was like came into existence, right? And so they're a very young country with this like long rich culture, Marie Curie, all these incredible scientists. A lot of the kids grow up being told like you should get into STEM and we need to develop this country, right? And so it actually feels a lot closer to an emerging market country than it does to Western Europe. And so my take is this: I think like what Shopee's figured out is that there are these emerging market countries that are like frontier emerging market countries that are sizable, and have other kinds of benefits from it that are not very clear, right? Like so I mean, I'm just going to throw a couple of examples here. Like with Poland, if you crack Poland, it becomes your doorway to rest of it's almost like playing Risk. You get Poland, you can move into Russia, you can move downwards into the rest of Eastern Europe, and then if you build enough of fortress, you move west into
Germany.
Western Europe. But you don't try to Yes, correct. But you don't move into Germany so quick because they're quite developed. GDP per capita is very high. They're
Yeah.
very used to Amazon. It's going to be hard to win, right? LATAM very similar. They're moving downwards, conquer, then move up towards the US gradually. It's very silent. Notice they're not touching the Middle East. They're not touching Africa, and there's a reason for that. GDP per capita very low. LTV is going to be low. CAC is going to be high, right? So they're being very targeted about the markets that they get into. And the truth is they have all these lieutenants, and this is like my like the last and most important piece. You have lieutenants in your team that are so freaking strong and are getting bored of what they've been doing for the last 4 years. They've conquered Southeast Asia. Like you have these incredible assets. If you don't capitalize on these assets, they're going to leave out and start their own companies. Whoever's sitting up there said, the guys who are running Malaysia, Thailand, like all that knowledge can be transferred to with and save time. Like it took you three years to get to the ARR that you have right now. How can I do that in 18 months? So the guys who are running Poland are actually coming from Malaysia. The guys who are running Brazil came from Vietnam. They're sending people from very corollary markets. They have 30 million population, GDP per capita very similar. You, Malaysia, you go to Poland, right? And like guys from Malaysia, like I'm not like this is actually happening. Guys from Malaysia packing their bags and moving to Poland. They're like, dude, my company now gets to send me to Poland. I get to live in a cool place for 5 years and dominate and conquer, and I know how to do this. Like, so they do have like from that people strategy standpoint, like that knowledge and documentation in people's heads, and it's an opportunity for them. So this is why I think it's an incredible master stroke. They're doing it at the right time, and they're getting fresh capital to give their lieutenants like a cushion to fall back on. I think they're going to kill it. I'm worried about India, to be honest. I'm worried about India, but like Eastern Europe and LATAM, I don't think these other competitors have a chance.
So a few points to your points. First, I think Andrew, I thought you were from Malaysia, so you should use Commonwealth English and pronounce it as lieutenants instead of lieutenants. But anyway,
Oh, is it supposed to be lieutenant?
Yeah,
it's left. I
British.
mean, it's lieutenant in British English, just because in the past the French would write U as V, and when
Yeah,
illiterate British just read it and said, "Oh, lieutenant," because there's a V.
got it.
Yeah. Anyway, so a few points here. I mean, first, I agree with you that that Free Fire is already global, so they learn a lot. I mean, not only just they have the ad space to acquire customers, convert customers, but also, I mean, they figure out, I mean, how to do the payment, I mean, how the customers behave, etc., etc. All this know-how could be invaluable when they deal with these markets. And Dev, you mentioned about Allegro in Poland, which sort of beat Amazon. But very interesting. We have an intern from Poland, and who has lived in Indonesia, so she understands. So she can talk to us in the same language, and her sense is that Amazon not able to beat Allegro not because of Allegro is strong, but because Amazon couldn't figure out how to do emerging markets. I mean, if you look at all the emerging markets play that Amazon has been doing, India is a special case because they really invest a lot. I mean, they have good executives, but still it's a tough battle. But look at all the other emerging markets foray of Amazon is not particularly successful. China's big
100%.
failure. Brazil is very small, and Poland. They've been in Poland running fulfillment centers since 2014, but only until March this year they launched a Polish website. So what was there before?
I've read that.
A Polish version of the German website. Yeah. So that part, it shows the levels of localization that Amazon's willing or able to do. And Andrew, I don't agree with you that AliExpress is shit. I mean, relatively, compared to what Shopee is able to do, and obviously people see the difference. But I think amongst all the Alibaba companies which are trying to go international, AliExpress is pretty decent. They've been doing amazing work, and I know the people there, and they figure out lots of things on their own. But the tragedy is, maybe it's not, I'm not sure what's the right word. The tragedy or the unfortunate thing is, it's a small part of Alibaba in terms of resources, in terms of executives, in terms of sort of leadership support. They don't get as much as Taobao or Tmall. So which actually limits their growth. And in a way, maybe it's similar to Lazada, but I think even Lazada gets more attention within Alibaba compared to AliExpress. So pulling off whatever that is there, I think AliExpress team has been doing phenomenal work. So Shopee looking at this opportunity, saying that, hey, AliExpress obviously has its handicap, and Allegro, Amazon have been dealing with China sellers, but I mean, you just look at all the comments in China about these platforms. So obviously they have this opportunity, and the other competitors are all those B2C sites and apps that are coming out of China. As far as the cross-border segment is concerned, I think Shopee is much stronger than those guys. So that part is no doubt. You mentioned about the guy running Poland is from Malaysia, the guy running Brazil is from Vietnam, the guy running Mexico now used to be the guy handling the cross-border in China. So he moved there.
Head of CP in China.
Yeah,
Makes
he
sense.
moved there a couple of months
That
ago, and yeah, it's pretty. I think it's pretty interesting that they are sending all these executives to these new markets, bringing their know-how, and also trying. I mean, what is interesting to see is that whether these guys are able to build up a local management team relatively quickly, because so far they have been doing that better than Amazon, better than Alibaba, building up local teams. But now they are dealing with markets where, I mean, if you look at Southeast Asia, so they already had lots of people working for Garena for the, when they launched Shopee. So they have the pool of talent they could readily tap into. And here is slightly different. I would argue that for markets like Poland and Europe, it would be easier. When you go to relatively more mature markets, you can more easily find people. Latin America might be a little bit more difficult, but from what I heard from friends who have been running e-commerce related businesses from China, but based in Brazil, they are pretty amazed. I mean, a few people are telling me that companies like Shopee, like JNT, like Lalamove, like TikTok, they are very different from other Chinese companies. I mean, sorry, these are not, some of them not Chinese companies. JNT positions itself as an Indonesian company, but these companies are different from Chinese companies when they manage global talent, when they manage local teams. They're obviously doing much better job. So having taken whatever that China has to offer and growing their first business in a diverse environment in Southeast Asia, I think helps them sort of have this natural whatever gene culture of managing multinational businesses. They are having a pretty good advantage, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few years later they go and challenge Amazon directly, but I think that's not their focus now, and that should not be their focus now.
Yeah, and I'll add some final points to this. I do like Dave's point by saying that there is somewhat of a moral hazard if they don't figure out. Well, I don't know. I haven't looked into the P&L and what their core, like what's bringing in the cash. As long as that part of the company is healthy and can support whatever, the printing money, the sentiment is fine. It makes sense. And I think as long as the expansion sticks to their lanes, like Andrew pointed out, it's almost like an arbitrage, opportunity where that if their product fits, there's a product market fit in these markets and no one else is tackling it, it will come down to speed and execution. And you can think of it also in terms of like, Peter Thiel's 4 characteristics of monopolies, right? And I think one of the biggest advantages they have where operating in their lanes is they know how to do the branding part well, right? So they like, one of the things in Southeast Asia, why they're able to dominate so well is just like they really hit the marketing much better than everyone else, right? Just the awareness was huge. And I think they have that as a brand and a moat, right? So, and you think about the network effects, that's very simple, marketplace 101, right? It's just about assortment and price. And I think, well, Amazon knows how to do that well, in terms of price. And then all these emerging markets, price and assortment are going to be is what's going to matter. But if no one is doing it faster, I think that it's a good opportunity for them to do that. In terms of proprietary technology, that's a question if they could bake it in, like the Amazon ecosystem, having their own like algorithm and ranking SEO and all these kind of things that kind of really make the magic of Amazon work under the hood. So I think it does make sense, but there is still some of the moral hazard that if macro winds shift a little bit, it could spell trouble for them. They really need to build that foundation. But I think the idea for timing wise now, if they stick to those lanes, man, they could dominate in them, and that could convert to the value later on. It's just like when Amazon was starting out, everyone says they're not profitable for so many years. It could turn out to these kind of situations where it's something material that they're building, and I think that my last point is the expansion. It's an extension of the rocket DNA, man. Like you could take the guy out of the rocket, but you can't cannot take the rocket out of the guy. They really know how to do that, man. It's like really textbook Ali 101. So
they've done it better than Rocket. Can I just quickly
Yes,
respond to a few things? So
Sure.
first, I take back AliExpress's shit. You're right, Jangan. That being said, let me explain what I mean by that, and it actually connects very strongly with what Alex just said, right?
Yeah.
I think it's not just about price; it's price x assortment x speed. That's e-commerce. I want the cheapest stuff
Basics.
in the fastest time, and I want everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think Amazon realized this, which is why 60% of their sales now comes from marketplace, and that's why you have this whole business model with aggregators, etc. Right? And I think what Shopee does really well is it's able to take cross border and then localize it really quick, right? And then it creates also opportunities for B2B2C, right? So you have all these small merchants who then buy via Shopee, which actually happens in China a lot. People buy on 1688.com or Alibaba.com and then sell it on Taobao and make a bit of a margin with that. So they create all these little micro entrepreneurs, right? So Shopee is actually replicating a lot of that success and structure. And so number one. Number two is like they're able to speed it down. Instead of AliExpress, I think has been complacent with time. If you look at Eastern Europe, it takes almost 2 weeks for them to get it for CB. With Shopee, there's like a massive focus to try to reduce that time down and then like also create this impression that's almost local, right? I think in Southeast Asia, what Lazada cracked first and then they copied really well was this idea of like creating free trade zones via partnerships with the government that actually allows cross-border to almost get to 3 days. If you figure out what are the SKUs that sell really fast, you can park it in a warehouse, and if it doesn't get sold, you end up selling that from these warehouses, right? So this is where I think AliExpress hasn't been doing really well, and these guys are killing it. Sorry, Alex, it's just 2 other things. This idea of expansion in new regions, right? I still remember being in Lazada and being freaked out that Amazon was sending people to Singapore to
I remember
scout.
that. Yeah.
And I remember shitting in my pants because like they were this behemoth who knew e-commerce way more than us, right? And then they launched with Prime. And it wasn't like Amazon, it was literally like 5 kilometer radius, 3,000 SKUs, and like it was like this is it. Like after that, 4-year anxiety, like this was your big launch. And where are you in Southeast Asia today? They're not there. Shopee, on the other hand, I remember, and we will not say how I saw this, but like I remember looking at their mobile acquisition. So at this point, we were a desktop company, right? And we were trying to figure out mobile, and I saw their mobile funnel with this like 200 line Excel that had like very specifically how they were acquiring by channel, and like it freaked me out. They just knew things about how to move people from one step to another, from one day to another, from like from one scroll to another on an app. Their knowledge about how to get people hooked onto a mobile app is incredible, and their ability to then take that to any app, they will just do this across apps, like just knowing how to get people to use mobile apps and build.
Hey,
That's their gaming roots, probably, right?
yeah, it's gaming.
Gaming
Definitely.
plus
Yeah,
also
yeah.
Rocket.
Gaming.
All gaming, it's
Correct.
like just the
Correct.
whole detail attention focus funnel.
And one last little piece of like juicy nuggets, right? This idea of localization, and I think, like, Alex, you mentioned this before, like Rocket tried to do it in Southeast Asia. If you think about it, right, these guys, Yagang, Forest, none of them are from Southeast Asia. They're Chinese transports to Singapore. Obviously, they've been there for a while, but they've managed to build a great group of what's the word again? Lieutenants. A great group of lieutenants, right, from Southeast Asia. And I think they have a really good culture on teaching them how to get these next group of generals. And on top of that, right, I actually do think they have a massive mindset on partnership. So what I hear is, I don't know how true this is that actually the leaders of Shopee have been spending a lot of time in LATAM personally. Like some of them are migrating there. Forrest, I don't know how true this is, but there's rumor on the street that Forrest bought a TV station in Brazil, right? And it has
I
nothing
believe
to
it.
do with it has nothing to do with the sea business, right? In Colombia and Brazil, the two biggest events on Free Fire globally, I think, yeah, Colombia and Brazil was with two of the largest music artists and DJs of these markets, right? They have this ambition to be like the metaverse player, and they're localizing like mad, right? They're working with local artists, local football players. They really know how to like localize in ways that these, like, it's like global brand, local execution, and they're doing it better than anyone else.
Can I add some quick points? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sure.
So first we mentioned about price, assortment, and speed. In China, I mean, we talk about e-commerce value proposition. I mean, we have this catchphrase, four things: 多快好省, which translates to speed, assortment, speed, quality, and price. So basically, each e-commerce player is trying to satisfy two or three of them. I mean, it's impossible to do all four of them. And this mantra came from the communist leaders in the past, when they said, okay, how we should serve the people. And this is the four things people are looking for. And now you translate this into the four things consumers are looking for is the same. Second quick thing. AliExpress, their positioning in Alibaba was always meant to be cross-border. So they work with service providers. Shopee, when they enter a market, they try to be a local e-commerce platform. So which is different. I mean, the way they're able to control the whole experience, the customs, the warehouses, etc. is very different. One more thing. I think moving forwards, e-commerce competition in emerging markets, we will see probably a race between C Group and TikTok. So that's going to be quite interesting.
Ooh.
Okay.
That opens
Segue into topic 3.
that opens to a big point. Okay, one last point for me. I think people like Yegan or Forrest will probably need to buy airplanes very soon.
They have.
They already have it, right? Okay,
Done.
cool.
Done. No, they're not. No, that's why they're going to Brazil. Like, as what I understand it,
They can't rely on commercial airlines if they want to manage so many
Yeah.
markets, and they like to be on the market.
Where do you think that 6.5 billion is going?
Yeah.
Planes.
Yeah.
Whole air fleet.
Can I get Jangan to explain TikTok's dominance? Jangan, you don't get to.
Hold on, wait,
like
no.
That's
Let's
a
jump
separate
into it.
topic.
We'll jump into it later. Separate topic.
That's a separate topic.
So I want
Okay.
to say two final things for me. So the reason why the Chinese are going to win in e-commerce is because the fundamentals of communism align with the fundamentals of e-commerce, essentially. that's one. My second point would be then the way I would look at it then is like e-commerce is going to be entering a whole new interesting phase.
Explain your first term first. No. Explain that. What do you mean?
What he said that what Jangan said, right? Speed, assortment, and whatever is what the communists said in the values. That's exactly how
But
you
it was
build
also-
e-commerce, right?
I think he missed the word equality, and he dropped the E and called it quality.
No, it's quality. It was quality.
Potato.
I think it was assortment, speed, equality, and price, and then like Jangan's like quality.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Forget the E.
equality is a French concept, just as communism is a German concept. So yeah.
Yeah. So and then my final point is like, I think that what Amazon is really good at is kind of this bottom-up approach. And the reason why they didn't make this huge splash is because they like to collect data first, and they're going to focus on the areas where they could probably win more quickly, and I think that that's not clear to them. They're not going to do this, top-down approach that kind of we see in emerging markets. So it's just two very different strategies. I think you got to see in the long term of which one's going to play out, right? So it's bottom up versus top down, and both have been able to pull it off. It's just top down is more flashy, makes bigger splash. You get more market share up front, but the question is long-term value sustainability. And I think that's what Amazon's been able to prove over time. So it's still hard to see where this goes. But if they get dominance faster, and the moats are too big, maybe Amazon can't chip away at that long term. But I think it still goes down to the four fundamentals. Shall we move on, guys, or should we go to TikTok, or do you want to do Carousel?
Let's do TikTok. Junk on top of TikTok. So let's move on to TikTok.
TikTok first, Jangan. Juicy. I want to hear more about TikTok.
All right. Explain your comments. Let me preempt it, right? So TikTok doing e-commerce. It's been in the media lately. The narrative is that this is very, very early stages of monetization for TikTok. A lot of the articles I read was alluding that TikTok needs to avoid what happened to Vine, of creators moving to YouTube and other platforms. And the way they're looking at monetization of their current user base is looking at e-commerce, right? And I think Douyin, or tell me the pronunciation, right? They in early 2020 or last year, they were able to make $70 million from e-commerce sales alone. So the question is, how can they do this with easy, low friction while capturing the value to avoid, not really, it just not working out. So Jangan, can you help explain your comments earlier?
I think Vine's very different, right? I mean, they didn't get the video part exactly right compared to TikTok. So, but YouTube is going to. I mean, if you see what's happening to YouTube, they are doing the short, and they're doing live streaming as well. So on the surface, you see that YouTube and even Facebook is moving to certain territories that TikTok has been doing, but TikTok in China has been formidable. So they have been doing e-commerce for a while, and in the beginning, people would brush it off, saying that I just people watch shows, sort of impulse buying, and because some celebrity said, okay, this is good, and people will buy it. I didn't pay much attention to that. I mean, last year, but this year you see all the splashes that TikTok has been making. Right, the first there's a saying that I mean you will eventually overtake Tmall in terms of GMV either this year or next year. So if they can do that, it's gonna be crazy. And second is my mom started to buy things on Douyin, and it's just and they did the calculation. I mean, you just every morning you wake up and do you open up your Taobao or do you open up your TikTok or Douyin, whatever. So my mom who used to, I mean, who still does it, I mean, once in a while, go to the supermarket which is next to my estate. No, not my estate, the estate we're living in. So
your estate.
When you say estate,
he said estate.
So
British estate or like French countryside estate.
How many people plant tea for you in this estate? Tell us more.
Do you also have a motel, Jangan? Because we can be motel friends.
Yeah. 20 rooms. He has 20 houses, dude.
Anyway, across the road, there's a big market where she used to get all the agricultural produce. But for the past few months, she has only been buying that on two platforms, Pinduoduo and Douyin. So both are gamified versions of gamified or social versions of e-commerce. But of course, both are operating in different ways. But the thing about Douyin is crazy is that a friend of mine also invested in a company which sells this kind of agricultural produce through live streaming on Douyin. And that lady only does live streaming from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. And why? Because that's when the sort of mid-aged and old ladies in China wake up and before they go to work or before they go to meet their friends, right? I mean, you have this time window, and the calculation is that people are spending much more time on TikTok or Douyin compared to what they do at Taobao. So theoretically, if you convert 1/10 of that time into browsing for e-commerce and 1/10 of that browsing for e-commerce time into buying, we can still work out that the math that people are still spending much more time buying things on TikTok or Douyin compared to Taobao. And you look at whole Alibaba strategy in China in the past few years, they have been acquiring companies, they have been investing in companies with one important purpose is to secure customer traffic. because it doesn't have social. It doesn't have this natural way that
correct.
that customers will just come to you.
Come to it. Yeah.
And Tencent has tried that, but for whatever reason they couldn't get it to work. So TikTok is at a naturally interesting position where they're relatively young, and they've been doing this aggressively. They're showing results, and they started that in Indonesia. So earlier this year, when they said that, okay, they started the shopping cart which links to Shopee, and people say, oh, okay, that's just a small attempt and stuff. But now you look at Indonesia, you can do the whole shopping experience on TikTok. And,
Yeah.
and all the e-commerce shopping, I mean, people complain about, I mean, being impulse and stuff, but I think most of the shopping activities, or most frequent shopping activities, are impulse.
Let me ask a question. Do you guys think, I personally anecdotally feel that social e-commerce is a very Asian thing. Like, I think the informal market of, like, people, influencers selling stuff through social media has been huge just for the longest time in Asia, right? Like all these small markets. I don't know. In the West, do you feel like that's not really the case? And because like all these big players, Facebook, Instagram, they haven't been able to really do that. So is this going to be a regional difference kind of thing? Or do you think that everything's just going to converge to social e-commerce eventually now?
Well, I think this is like one of these things where, yeah, I think it's one of these things where if you're thinking about it in the perspective of social e-commerce, just that phrase where basically, less technologically or less advanced societies skip the intermediary step in between, right? So, for example, like in China, people basically skip credit cards; they just went from cash to digital wallets directly, right? And that's what social e-commerce is, right? And so, to answer your specific question, Alex, is I think this idea of shopping as entertainment has actually existed in the West in a long time. I mean, home shopping, as far as I know, was invented in America. Like this idea, like I'm American, you're American, Alex, but like at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, after all the like main broadcast channels go off, it would just be from like 11 p.m. to like 5 a.m. just infomercials of like whatever, right? So this concept of like melding the two of like content and the commerce has existed in the West. It's not exactly in the same form, and I think that's just mostly a function because of like, again, like there's that step in between where it's not like a one step, two step function. It's like a one step, like 5-step function. But we'll get there eventually, right? And I think like you see this also. We talked about this like a few months ago when we were doing our podcast. Is I had this theory that like basically in the West, all websites start off, or all digital properties start off as either a content function or a commerce function, right? And slowly as the ecosystem matures and develops, those two things will converge closer and closer together until we do get something that's similar to what we see in the PRC or in Asia.
Yeah.
I had one other point also about this, and then I'll let Andrew go. So for me, looking at this story, and I'm looking at it from the TikTok perspective, not from the Douyin perspective, it's not actually a story so much about TikTok in the United States. It's a question about Shopify, right? So who do you think Amazon's biggest international competitor outside of China is? Or sorry, let me rephrase this. Who do you think Amazon's like biggest competitor in the US is in e-commerce?
I mean, I guess it's Shopify.
It was a bad rhetorical question. It's Shopify, right?
You set me up.
I set you up. I led you into it. So just give you guys, bam. So to give you guys some context, right? So Walmart e-commerce in their most recent fiscal year, their entire e-commerce business did I think like 43 billion US dollars in sales, right? Do you want to guess how much Shopify's GMV was in Q2 2021 alone?
More than 43 billion, 50 billion?
42.2. 42. They did in one quarter of Q2.
Wow, comparable. They're the same size as e-commerce.
No, but that's Walmart's entire year. That's their annual online sales. This is just Shopify's Q2. So Shopify in just Q2 2021 did as much GMV as Walmart did in all of their fiscal year, right? And so what I'm trying to get at is this. So this deal that TikTok and Shopify. So the deal actually is this, right? So basically, what it's allowing is it's allowing TikTok influencers to set up like little home pages within their TikTok account. And then ultimately, if you click on it or whatever, they'll lead you to a Shopify page, and then the transaction, the fulfillment, and all that stuff happens on the Shopify end. Shopify actually did the exact same deal with Facebook in May of 2020. So basically, people that are using Instagram, you could set up like a little Instagram shopping page, and that was linked to Shopify. And it's the exact same function, right? So really, for me, what this is, it's like sort of like the anti-Amazon alliance in the US. You think about like how e-commerce has evolved. So an interesting stat is basically half of all online searches now in the US for shopping start on Amazon. So Amazon has sort of like monopolized the entire stack, right? So the search starts on Amazon, the actual like browsing and the products on Amazon, the payment happens on Amazon, and the fulfillment and everything thereafter. It's a completely integrated stack, right? And so so how do you compete with that? So the only way you can really compete with that is like modularization. So Shopify has been going around and making these different deals and acquiring these different companies to sort of compete with that. They have a deal with Facebook, they have a deal with Google, they have this deal with TikTok. They're actually a pretty big shareholder in Stripe, and Stripe is also their payment partner for all of their both on-platform and third-party platform solutions. They actually just opened Shop Pay to Facebook and Google merchants, and also Shopify has their own fulfillment business or service now as well, right? So for me, it's about like Shopify going around and sort of like Voltroning together this like anti-Amazon engine to compete. So that's my take on it.
Go, Andrew.
Yeah. So I think there's two things, right? One is to what Jangan said. It's about creating a lifestyle space. And you see, with e-commerce, the problem is like people need to be reminded to buy, or people need to think about buying something before they open up the app, right? And what Douyin and TikTok do really well is people open them up as social spaces. I'm just going to give you an anecdote from a time that we didn't have social e-commerce in Southeast Asia yet. I was taking a Grab in Bangkok. We got into a car. I asked the Grab driver, "Does she use Lazada?" Because it used to be my favorite question with every person I used to meet and harass them and try to find out why they liked it or why they didn't like it. And so I asked her, where does she do her online shopping? And she's like, "Oh, I just buy on Facebook Marketplace." And this both shocked me and like kind of annoyed me because they had just launched like 3 months ago. And I was like, wait, you don't buy on Lazada, but you buy on Facebook Marketplace. Why? And she's like, oh, I need to chat with the seller. I want to see their face and their profile and to see if I trust them. Right. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. Like, because in the West, what happens is people just use search. They look at reviews. They're like, all right, that's good for me. I'm going to buy. Whereas in Southeast Asia, I think because, going to Jangan's quadrifecta of assortment, speed, price, and quality, right? Quality is
Quality,
always the one we
equality.
compromise on. We're like, if it's, yeah, quality slash equality, right? So if it's counterfeit, if it's low quality, deal with it, right? And so because of that, I think in emerging markets, like video, audio, chat, social has become a huge way to overcome the chasm of trust, right? So if I see a face on it, if that person seems relatable to me, then it's more likely I'm going to buy on them. And that's why the conversion rate on these social channels has been incredible. I launched the live stream on Lazada, and it was like it's still the fastest growing channel for e-commerce sales in Southeast Asia. And the reason why we did it was because WhatsApp and Instagram accounted for, according to like my team's back calculation, almost 30 to 35% of all e-commerce transactions in Southeast Asia. This was in 2017, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if that proportion has still maintained and hasn't even been taken over by Shopee and Lazada, right? So a lot of people still choose to pay, and that's why like every single payment player is launching like pay links and these other tools to capitalize on people using WhatsApp and Instagram as payment channels, right? So I think like social as a whole is going to grow, and like the but like my caveat when I was in Lazada is like it was hard to see people coming to Lazada for the social experience, but it was quite easy to see people going to a social channel to try to get the e-commerce experience. That's like has a higher chance of success, right? Um, the trick is like, though, how do you not get it to be too salesy? Because if it becomes too salesy and you keep pushing product in front of people's faces, they might drop out, right? And so this is where I think like the TikTok strategy may need to broaden and expand. And like I think what's going to happen is they're going to start having more verticals jump in, monetizable verticals. So it wouldn't just be like shopping, it could become like travel and tourism, buy your tickets, etc. So you have these influencers that, you know, go to really cool places
Mm,
and then will push you
yeah,
stuff, right?
I like
So
that.
in China, how it works is like, so we've talked about this before, right? Alibaba is the third largest advertiser in China, right? The third largest recipient of online AdX, and the biggest chunk of that comes from a program called P4P. Now, how P4P works is this, right? So another anecdote, and one of the things that blew my mind when we first worked with Alibaba, I remember going to a meeting with them, and we were trying to figure out what their customer acquisition costs for certain channels were against some of ours. We'd just been acquired. We wanted to adjust to the group company, and we had this meeting, and they did not understand what our questions meant. And you know, today it's common knowledge. Like, I thought I was lost in translation, and it was like a Mandarin English thing, but and today it's common knowledge that you take cost centers and turn them into revenue centers, and you can
Mm.
do that across every single line on your cost, right? This is what Amazon does. But to me back then, this was a complete new concept. I was like, they were confused because my cost center was their revenue center, right? And so for
Mm,
them, the CAC on affiliate channels was a revenue line. So the way it works is this, right? They have 40,000 merchants, or 40 million merchants. These merchants can advertise on publishers, right? So, and these publishers in China are typically influencers. So it's guys on Weibo, on WeChat, on all these different social platforms. And for every product that they sell, they get a cost per sale. So a commission is paid out to the influencers that sell that item. Alibaba makes a percentage of that sales. That percentage is really tiny. It's 1 to 2%. It's almost like a payment charge, right? But that forms the bulk of Alibaba's revenues from 8x, right? And so this is very interesting, because if you look at what TikTok is doing, they're basically developing that in-house. They're basically saying, we have the influencers, we don't need the traffic to go outside, and now we can actually just bring the merchants, and you do that on the platform, and we monetize it. Now what they can do is, like, because they are sector agnostic and social is the umbrella, they can go, what are the different e-commerce alternatives? Can I even do crypto? Could there be a guy who talks about stock trading and crypto and then take a cut from it? And I think that's where it's going to get exciting. They're probably going to build like this massive platform to just monetize from different kinds of verticals that are linking into TikTok.
And this is exactly what Facebook has been very slow to adapt to. And if you think about TikTok and all the companies in China, they talk about direct conversion, they talk about paying a commission on a conversion. But Facebook, on the other hand, I think only recently started allowing influencers to monetize in ways other than advertising. Because I mean, the problem with advertising is that I mean the massive amount of medium to small influencers, and how much do you pay them, and how much do you motivate them? It's very hard. I mean, I've seen multiple efforts to build up like micro exchanges, right, with the small influencers which might have like 1 or 2 thousand followers, and how much should you pay them for them to advertise for a product. So TikTok make all this experience in the app, so they can have a direct conversion, and all this like all this how would I say, all these influencers essentially became drop shippers in a way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And one more point, which I think Andrew brought up, is that the reason why people buy on social is that, um, I mean, Lazada was I mean, the way it was built was too rational, right? I mean, you have the standard way of sort of displaying the product and
Mm,
stuff. Um,
mm,
but if you look at the experience in China, that's exactly how Amazon failed, right? I mean, they have very rational
mm,
way, people that go and search and they discover the product, they read reviews, it's all very rational. But people don't trust the sellers. People need to find, I mean, if you look at the displays on Taobao now on Shopee, is that it's very colorful. It's, I mean, they try to display as much information to consumers as possible so that consumers can trust. And that's how my mom buys things as well, right? She looks at the different things and she says, okay, this is a seller I can trust. And if you look at TikTok, they are bringing it to the next level. I mean, they are not only showing you the images and descriptions, they show you the product in different ways. They even tested it on video. So So the level of trust that can bring to consumers is different, and I think in a waste, because the whole commerce is much more developed, so you have a much more mature way to establish the trust. I mean, the reviews, the systems, and also Amazon sort of having this trust of the platform to regulate the sellers on it, which is very different from what you can see in emerging markets.
A question for you, Janga. Do you think Instagram has a shot here at all? Because I mean, they have a shopping team now. They're really pushing shopping as a channel, right?
Uh, I I I don't know. I mean, the track record of Facebook and associated companies, I still don't understand why it's so difficult to launch WhatsApp Pay in whichever country they want to launch.
I think with payments it's a regulatory thing, and because they're so big, and the way, so I think they tried to go, it's like moonshot with Luno, right? So they tried to launch this massive, sorry, Libra, right? They tried to launch this massive opportunity of a cryptocurrency and a global exchange, right? They were like, let's rule the world as opposed to like do tiny stuff, and then that just completely like didn't work out. So I
That,
I think that experience made them slow down.
that's like a Google trying to build Waymo while Tesla wants to like test L2, right? I mean,
Correct, correct. So I'm just going to say one thing here, right? Which is, I realize as we're having this conversation that being a native in whatever medium you plan to launch in is extremely important. So Instagram, I think, is going to find it very difficult to move away from the what you may call it, the pictures as a primary format. You still, like, when you load it up, it's going to be pictures, and like stories is like another segment, right? So story still takes a very small percentage of screen real estate. I think as a company it's very hard for you to move into that, whereas TikTok started as this native video app built on 5G, built on phones that were powerful enough to support scroll to get videos, right? And I think the one company to watch here, which I'm thinking, like, I used to poo-poo them, but now I'm thinking very strongly about them, is Snap, right? I think AR is. I mean, look. I think we like anyone who was in the '90s who didn't see smartphones coming, like some advancements are obvious. They're going to happen whether you like it or not. And for me, like in the next 10 years, we're seeing AR glasses, right? Mixed reality glasses that can overlay graphics on it. Snap and Facebook. Facebook just launched their glasses with Ray-Ban last week. Snap's had their glasses for a while. Snap's investing very heavily. They have a couple of like e-commerce partnerships, and I think like what we're going to see, that next stage is like if that's where TikTok loses out, if they're not able to adapt very quickly and get into this new universe, metaverse, AR verse that's being created, that's where it's going to be a struggle.
so we used to have this intern from France, but of a North African descent, and he's apparently connected to all this, like, I wouldn't say underworld, but this part of society which is large enough but kind of marginalized. Nobody talks about them in media, and but that was like 2 years ago. He was telling me that everyone was buying and selling on Snap. For the reason is that, for the reason that Snap, I mean, simple reasons, right? I mean, Snap, when you take a screenshot, it tells the other party that you are taking a screenshot. He said we try to do this kind of trades where people don't trust each other, and these mechanisms which help you build a trust will facilitate transactions.
Yeah. Well, he should use Telegram, bro. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Okay.
Nice. Alex, let's move.
Yeah, I mean, I had one final comment. I think your story about the Bangkok girl who sold on marketplace is interesting, because I've noticed that if you want to look at it from a very localized position, fashion is very fragmented in Southeast Asia, and I think the reason why you kind of saw them doing that, especially Thailand is just well known for having just cheap retail fast fashion, and it's you could even see, like, my past few interns, they have really successful businesses that grown over the years, where they can just support their own lifestyle just by selling clothing, by uploading on Instagram, right? So I think it's a very regional thing, from a bottom up perspective, that this kind of behavior exists. So I don't know if it's the same thing in the US, where you have all these influencers who sell their clothes. Maybe it is. I don't know. But like I saw that, from Malaysia to Thailand, and these girls actually would import all the clothes from Thailand if they were doing this in Malaysia, right? So it's just very fascinating. But final topic, we are talking about Carousell. Carousell raised $100 million, $1.1 billion valuation. Their last round was in 2018, $85 million Series C. I found the PR narrative very interesting. They are using the money to buy companies, right? To acquire companies. It's not really growth money. So, what is your guys' take on this current race?
I think what we just talked about C, about TikTok, this is all the stuff that that Carousell could have done at least part of it, but have not done. So I don't know. I mean, they started as as a place where people can use stuff, right? I mean, people love it. I mean, I use it regularly, right? I mean, just put things that I don't want, put there. If somebody wants, we'll take it. But to build a viable business out of that, I mean, essentially they have to go a few routes, right? I mean, either the C2C route or move into sort of more viable segments of classified, which is auto and a property. But auto property, you have players there, and I think what Carousell has been doing in the past few years is that they have been making acquisitions. I think Muda is part of Carousell Group now, and I think they also
Yep.
acquired OLX Philippines. So
Yeah.
so they are trying to consolidate into a classified group, whereas I think the classified as business model in Southeast Asia is moving towards I mean general classified. It's moving towards C2C commerce. It's moving towards all this like TikTok and Shopee stuff. I don't know how a second-hand marketplace for general stuff could be viable. I mean, in China you have this kind of marketplaces, but they are all affiliated to big groups. I don't see any sort of independent players making a sort of significant and viable presence. I'm not sure what you guys think.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, right? The business model is actually an incredible business model if you look at their counterparts in established markets. So if you look at Japan, so surprising enough, the US is the only one where Craigslist is like the standout, right? Like, but in every other market, in Europe, in Western Europe, in Japan, there are clear players, and that's why you see like who have they raised it from? It's like if I'm not mistaken, it's a Japanese PE fund, right? Um,
Korea.
or a South Korean
Korean.
fund.
It's a
So
Korean PE
basic,
fund.
Yeah, Korean.
yeah, there you go. So in
STIC.
East Asia, STIC, there you go. In East Asia and Western Europe, these kinds of businesses are actually incredibly profitable and they do really well. And if you think about why they're profitable, right? They compared to C2C e-commerce marketplace or large B2C e-commerce marketplace, the amount of overheads required to run this is extremely low. You basically create a platform. It's on the cloud, so you have load balancers that allow it to just expand for as much control as you need. There's no big campaigns and sales, so there's no massive like uplifts in tech. So the tech cost is relatively like low, right? The number of teams running this, like I remember looking at a European player that had 20 people running a several billion-dollar GMV business, right? So you can have like really small teams running this because it's completely automated. You create tools for people to post their stuff up and then you do it. The issue is, can you create enough revenue? And really there's like only a few sources of revenue. Number one, it's advertising. Number two, it's payments. And then number three, it's protection, right? So it's all these insurance and other kinds of services that you have that create kinds of protection for people. Protection is just an associate insurance sales model. You get an insurer to provide some kind of protection, and then you get 20 cents or 30 cents for everything. So what I like about this model is it's like in terms of like Dave's tech versus tech enabled, it's actually a tech business, right? It's really a software layer on transactions that exist in the real world, and you're taking these transactions and consolidating them at a much larger scale. So what I like about this business is it really is like you can do it with very low OPEX, you can do it with very low CAPEX, and you can just like in terms of it being a software switch, it's incredible, right? The issues are number one, Southeast Asia, those ways of making money are actually not very healthy, right? Like not a lot of people want to advertise, and not a lot of people want to pay for protection. Not a lot of people want to also pay for payments, right? So as a result, like your monetization ability is a bit limited. This is issue number one. Number two is the competitive space is getting incredibly tight. As Jangan mentioned, property and cars. There are specific platforms that do that, like Carson's getting their 1.1B valuation as well, and there's a whole bunch of other players that are doing the same thing. Caro in Singapore, etc. OLX is in the property space, so they are playing a very tiny niche, which is like small C2C products, right? The problem is Facebook is moving in this place, TikTok is moving in this place as well, and so it's becoming incredibly tight. Uh, I still think if you look at the numbers, I don't know what their specific revenue numbers are. I think there's a space for a $1 billion company doing this, so I don't think like this is like complete hooky. And in fact, I would love to see the numbers when it does come out. But if it's like anything in Eastern Europe or Western Europe or East Asia, where you're doing 20 plus X EBITDA margins, then it's a healthy as hell business, right? I would assume they probably have half of that kind of EBITDA margin, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a deeply profitable business.
Well, I'm actually glad you brought this up, Andrew.
Dave, you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry. Is there a delay on my side?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. No, I mean, I'm actually glad you brought up that point of the business, Andrew. Like, because for me, I dug into the like sort of the numbers behind Carousell. I mean, what I could find, obviously, because it's a private company and there's not a lot of press on them. But like to me, this deal doesn't make sense whatsoever, right? So I agree with you, Andrew, in your point. I think you're correct that like a classified business theoretically should be like an incredibly profitable business, right? I think like Craigslist only has 50 employees and they're doing I think like last I checked like 3 billion in revenue or something like that, right? So that's an incredibly efficient business. So I did a little bit of background research, and so the most recent stats I could find on Carousell was during their 2019 raise. So during 2019 raise, we were valued at 900 million. I think it was also another Korean investor, right? And at that time, they were doing 15.7 million in revenue and losing 39.4 million per year, right? And in terms of sort of like number of staff they had like 500 people on staff. So to me, I'm not to be like overly critical or maybe reductive, but I just have no idea what they're doing over there. And so this valuation, unless their numbers have changed substantially, just doesn't really make sense to me.
I apologize if I'm a little bit absent. Andrew, your partner, came over here and is hogging all the Wi-Fi bandwidth, and I'm a little bit triggered, but okay.
This explains why my Wi-Fi is so good today. Well, one of us has to pick my partner, and I'm glad it's you.
I'm trying to. I mean, I have time, so I think I can handle it. But it's been really hard to hear you guys, and so I apologize. I apologize if I missed some of the points, but I'll take a stab at this. Carousell was like, they were really touted to be really big early in the days. I think that they hit on a really good niche that got a lot of traction organically. And they kind of just rode that. And yeah, you're kind of right. This is technological product layer, but essentially what they've replicated was just a modern version of the classifieds. And if you see their current acquisitions that they have, the subsidiaries, it's all classifieds, right? Mm-hmm. Not to say, I kind of disagree that you can't make a profitable business out of this. Like Muda, which Carousell bought, has been massively profitable with a huge niche in Malaysia for a long time. But is it going to be a massive, $100 million business? Probably not, but it can be profitable, right? It has this kind of natural, it's kind of like an eBay, right? So, but what this is like, they put this kind of tech layer on it and they say like, I do AI. So it got a lot of money and big valuations, but it hasn't lived up to it. And I think word on the street early days was when I talked to all the VCs around this was that the founders got the money, they got to scale, but they had to put on their big boy pants to figure out how to monetize and make a real business out of it. But they were kind of struggling with that. That was the rumor on the street. I don't know how true that is. And if you look at the current raise and what they're doing, it just seems like they hadn't figured it out. And I think one of the lessons to learn here is that, there is some importance of knowing or having the clarity of how you want to monetize, even if you're not going to do it, even if it's a freemium strategy up front, or you're going to do it later on. But you need to understand how the economics are going to work down long term. It sounds like they just built a pretty decent product. I use it a lot, but as a dumping ground. I don't get much value other than some money back, and they don't really take advantage of that even. So they think they should have figured out how to monetize earlier with some testing and figured it out, and then they have a clear narrative on what they're going to do with the money and how to actually grow it. So that's my take of it, and it alludes to a bigger, broader discussion on C2C in general and how that's going to play out. And I think we touched upon it with TikTok and all those things. Like, people are coming into that, and they have better profitable machines. And they could just suck up the space, with better tech and better execution at the end of the day. So they're in a very precarious position, and they're kind of taking old assets and trying to make some value out of it. So can it be a Groupon that's maybe $1 billion company, but maybe that's the limit of it at the end of the day, right? So that's my take.
You know what this reminds me of, Alex? You've watched Succession, right?
Yes.
Remember that episode where Logan goes around buying cable, local news stations, old TV stations, and all the kids are like, "What the f are you doing? Go around buying old TV stations?" That's what this is.
Yeah.
So what
do you think
don't tell us, spoil it first. What happens after he buys the old TV stations?
Well, you have to watch the series. So Succession is my favorite series. It's about this old, powerful U.S. media family. The patriarch is getting old, and he's trying to pick one of his kids to take over the business. And basically, his mental facilities are kind of going out the window. And so this is one of the examples that the kids are using against him. It's he's pissing away our political capital, because obviously in the U.S. you can't buy TV stations without some regulatory approval, right? And you just have to watch the show. But I think it's an apt analogy.
Which streaming service?
HBO.
HBO.
Oh, HBO.
So what's the moral hazard here? So is your take on Succession that the father shouldn't do it, or does the father have a clear insight that children don't know about? Because it kind of puts you on a fence, right? So what was your take? So it's Carousell. Is this the right move, or is this the wrong move?
With the right move, okay. So let's be clear. What is right move? Right move going around acquiring all these legacy,
legacy
classifieds.
Companies. Is there going to be something that comes out of it? And is there some insight?
Okay, so here's the thing. Yeah. So fair enough. I think, there's a bit difference here, right? If I were, say, a PE fund, and I go around and I go and pick up all these old classified assets, and I try to do some sort of financial engineering jujitsu to then spin off and do a SPAC, and I maybe make 20%, 30% of my initial money back. That's one scenario, right? But I think as a venture investor, because that's what this is. This is a venture deal. Someone put in $100 million USD, expecting to get, I don't know, 200 million back, right? And that to me, on this kind of company and what I've seen so far, seems like a poor play. I just don't see any real innovation beyond their initial one, which was basically to do classifieds on mobile, right? Which is fine. That's a great innovation. But then they did that once, and there doesn't be any follow up after that.
It's almost like trying to rehash Groupon in this day and age.
A little bit, yeah. I think that's a good analogy too.
I think, Alex, we asked the question of right move or wrong move. I'm not sure the guys who sold this to Carousell, whether it's a cash or equity deal. I mean, if it's a cash deal, I would definitely say it's a right move to sell, because I mean, because these companies are being around. I mean, they're massively profitable, but you don't see their profit grow, right? I mean, it's not that in 10 years.
Are they massively profitable?
I think Muda should be profitable. And
Muda's Malaysia business.
The acquisitions that they bought, yes. The ones that they bought were profitable. So I guess the core business wasn't profitable. What they acquired was.
So basically, what I'm saying is that the guys who are selling these businesses are making the right move.
Agree. I agree with you, John.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with you.
And also, do you guys know the first version of Shopee was a copycat of Carousell?
Wouldn't be surprised.
Was it?
The first version of Shopee was a copycat of Carousell.
Can you get that on a record? Can we get that?
Fun fact: does anybody remember Lamido? Does anybody?
Yeah, I remember Lamido. I do remember Lamido. That was the rocket, right?
I still sometimes have nightmares of the day that we shut it down, because I remember thinking what a terrible idea it was. Essentially, Shopee started from a Lamido counterpart, and then completely blew it up and went into Lazada direction, right? And Lamido had incredible metrics in the beginning. But hindsight is 2021.
I forgot about that company. 2021.
And also, Andrew, we mentioned about the three revenue streams of classified business: advertising, payment, and protection. So So I think, I mean, we analyze these three, we probably know why Carousell finds it so hard to make money, right? Protection. I mean, in this region, people don't have trust, and all this social, all this like the experience of seeing a video, the experience of chat, whatever that sort of captures that right. I mean, the trust thing. So whether you buy insurance or not, I mean, it probably doesn't move the needle. And we look at payment. I mean, they're not capturing the transactions now, and they don't own the payment. So if they do the payment, they have to pay third parties a large fee. And also I think with the $100 million they have, if it's cash, I mean, it won't be enough for them to build that payment or wallet, whatever, to be viable. And advertising, it still goes back to our points, right? I mean, consumers don't advertise. It's the dealers, it's the agents,
Yeah.
it's the C2C sellers, but those guys are not here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if they were going for the user based play, but they didn't really go for the, if they had charged like a high enough take rate in the beginning, they would have know what their market and focus is. But it seems that, if they're trying to optimize on a payment stack now, like relative to what they can charge, it's not going to add much to it. And dude, building a whole payment infrastructure is going to cost a pretty penny aside from these acquisitions, right? So it's either like you're using the money for growth and tech, or, you're going to put all these kind of profitable companies together and try to probably sell it later or something. But it's a very weird situation, I think. So.
I still think, and we spoke about this in like episode 1. I think Grab needs to move into this space. Like it's an easy way. Like for Grab, it makes way more sense, right? They've got chat, they've got the super app. Like
It's a
if they
feature,
just launch this as a
right?
feature, as a feature, they would kill this market.
I mean, so do you guys think C2C there's still room to grow and play and be viable? It's just that no one's really kind of done it, right?
I mean, look, I think technically a lot of players in Shopee do it. Like if you look at the merchant base of Shopee, it exists, right?
Oh, yeah, that's
And
kind
a
of
lot
true.
of
Actually,
people
you're right.
yeah. And then if you look at like Instagram and WhatsApp sellers, like right now, like in Malaysia and Indonesia, there's a model, the agent model, that's really really popular, right? So what would happen is you have a celebrity that produces a hijab or some cosmetics, and then you have a ton of like downlines that buy the hijabs from them, and then they sell them. And in the past, there used to be prohibitions from these agents selling in digital ways, right? So they what happened is like the product owner would want to sell uh, directly on digital, but now those things are relaxing. And so like in Indonesia now, you have these people who do like these multi agencies. They sell like a hijab and a cosmetic product and some food products and something special for like the festivities, right? And I think what's going to happen is like the platforms required for them to be able to be these multi agents are going to increase, right? So you have TikTok getting into the space, you have Shopee getting into the space. um again, I think sorry man, sorry, I apologize on behalf of my partner Alex. Right? Yes.
Andrew,
I think what's going to happen,
instead of apologizing, try to speak up more while you will still have the good Wi-Fi. Share more
oh yeah,
insights
it's
while you
true. I
still have
mean,
the good Wi-Fi.
honestly, it's incredible not to be
Dude,
lagging. Like
you're
I'm just
clear.
like I'm looking at Dave's like you remember when videos used to have like .3 GP before we had like MPEG files, like
Yeah.
when you feel like Dave looks like one of those .3 GP videos, right? He's like pixelated, and then like Alex keeps hanging,
Yeah.
and today I feel awesome. So yeah,
I'm
is
feeling
this
your
what
pain
good
now.
Wi-Fi
I
feels
you
like?
know what? We found a problem. It's the problem was your partner. So
I think so. I think so. So I guess what we know what we got to do, huh?
I
And
don't know. What
and I'll
do we
leave
have to
it
do?
at that. I don't we have to end the podcast right now, Alex?
yeah, we got 8 minutes left. Do you want to use 8 minutes, or do you want to talk
Yeah.
about anything else, Delta, or
No,
are we good?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Well, I'll say this: the Malaysia economy is completely opening up in like probably one more month. They already just entered phase 2, which means even more retail opens up. Everyone's out and about. How is Singapore, Jangan?
Singapore is registering this huge rise in case numbers. I think I mean the past 2 days was like 800 each day, and yesterday reached 900. And I think today or tomorrow is going to. I mean, by the time today's the 16th of September, right, or 17th. 17th, yeah. So basically by today, I think you surpassed 1,000. But I mean, I think the government has been super rational. So they're monitoring the sort of serious illness and ICU numbers, which has thankfully not grown up significantly. but this is very very emotionally hard experiment. I mean, if you look at the society, people are talking about, how can you leave all this like vulnerable people and stuff, but it's a careful balance. I mean, I look at the F&B establishments around where I am. Lots of them are closed, and of course you can argue that many of them are not competitive in the first place. But at the end of the day, these are job loss, right? I mean, as far as the government is concerned, So I think it takes time to adjust.
I stopped looking at numbers. I think Malaysia is already 70% double vaxxed, right? I don't know. How's America, Dave? What is COVID in America like?
Oh, dude, it's all everyone talks about here, right? Like the president's talking about
it still?
It's just.
I mean,
it's we're at the point now where we're talking about like potentially it's like federal vaccine mandates for all employers that employ over 100 people, and this is like an epic battle. Like Joe Biden's approval rate is like he has like I think the lowest approval rate of any president in modern history in like the last 30 years because of this and Afghanistan.
Wow.
And actually, it's not even Afghanistan. It's mostly this.
Not bad.
It's mostly the COVID thing.
Yeah, most of COVID. Yeah. Well, I'm getting my diving license. Things are opening up. Can go diving soon.
Yeah, let's go diving.
Where are you going diving? Am I invited on this trip?
Tioman is opening up, but yeah, we'll do a dive trip. Let's do that.
This is a
barbarian dive trip. Jagan, you gotta get your license.
No, I have the license.
Yeah,
I have the license.
We're definitely doing a barbarian dive trip.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah. Barbarian dive trip. Let's go.
Let's do it.
We need a barbarian villa.
That's right. Maybe we'll record the next episode underwater, guys.
Underwater.
Can we get some underwater microphones?
Yeah,
yes, we can. We'll figure
it out. Sort out the underwater Wi-Fi
Under the sea.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry, we're not bringing Andrew's partner, so should be fine.
I think his partner was back.
It's just make sure my partner isn't with us underwater then.
I'm 100% sure we have to bring her. Like, I don't think it's possible to.
Yeah. Right. Okay, guys, we're ending on time today.
All right.
Thank you for another lovely session. Dave, enjoy America, and hopefully we'll see all you soon.
All right. Bye, guys.
Underwater.
Bye, guys.